Welcome to the Fantasy Football Forge. My name is Steve, and it is time to look at some running back tiers rankings. I have not prepared this ahead of time, so the end result will be a surprise to me. That will be the first iteration of my running back rankings for the 2025 NFL football fantasy football season. So without too much further ado, let's get into that. Of course, if you like this stuff, do the YouTube things. That is always appreciated. And of course, the final rankings will be towards the end of the video. And more importantly, there's a link down in the description to where these can be located on my website, where you can then find the updated rankings. That's the same link. That'll work, should work, all off season to find any updates that I make to the rankings, which will, of course, be happening all the way up and through the typical draft weekend for fantasy draft weekends, fantasy drafts. So without further ado, obviously I did go ahead. I put these all together. These are based on my projections that I've done and based on, which are of course based on their performance last season. Some little tweaks here and there happen because of any kind of offensive coordinator changes, might have changed things. If there were injuries or something like that, I might have tweaked some of the information that I put in based on last season's information, or even go back like 2 years to get more accurate information, hopefully. And then, of course, if you drafted a running back really high in the draft, suddenly the expectations of who's the starter is going to change there, and of course team changes. So it's not like there's nothing that's changed in this data set that gets fed into here, but also it's not perfect. That's why we go through and we make rankings after we do some projections, and that's what we're going to be doing. So I did, of course, go through, kind of tiered them out, in part based on the projections, in part based on where I felt like that's probably about the spot where I would cut that tier off. To start off, we have the elite talent and players that can catch the ball, because that's important for half-PPR, full PPR, standard PPR. Not really the standard anymore, but some people still play it. And those are the things where I'm doing projections for half-PPR. That's where my baseline begins and ends ultimately for my rankings. So it's up to you to know a little bit, hey, this player is, typically catches the ball a lot, so in full PPR, we would bump them up a little bit compared to this player that doesn't catch the ball a whole lot. Alvin Kamara compared to Josh Jacobs, if they're back-to-back in the rankings for full PPR, you would probably say, I think Alvin Kamara is probably going to jump Josh Jacobs in those types of rankings. I'm not saying that's what will happen here. That was a quick example that popped up there that I was able to see. This is roughly a top 36 video. I think we have 40-ish players on the screen right now. I could count, but I'm not gonna. That doesn't really matter. The main idea here is we're going right up into like that flex territory. And right off the bat, I'm just going to go through each group and readjust them. It's kind of tough not to put Saquon Barkley first, right? Expect that offense to still offer him a lot of touchdown opportunities, and he's really good at running the ball, can catch the ball. He's a lot of their offense. That's tough. Between Jahmyr Gibbs, Bijan Robinson, I trust the Detroit offense to give more touchdown opportunities, and I think they're pretty, both of them excellent, elite tier of running back. And then Christian McCaffrey we have coming off of injury, but I do see him back into this tier. It sounds like he's back to being healthy. I don't really want to miss out on Christian McCaffrey if he's going to be coming out, if he's going to be a deal this offseason. As a side note here, I have no clue where any of these guys are ranked. I have not been paying attention to fantasy football rankings. I have purposely not looked at them before doing these videos. So Ashton Genty, I think we'll keep these four in this order. And I want to be clear, I'm tempted that I think Christian McCaffrey has all the ability in the world to be number one. I guess that's why he's in that tier. I do think Ashton Genty will probably end up moving down a tier. Really nice situation there in terms of philosophy of the coach. I know there is some speak about some sort of running back by committee there in Las Vegas. I'm not too afraid of that in terms of overall opportunity and usage for Ashton Genty. So, I'm pretty optimistic about that situation. You can tell just from my projections alone, pretty optimistic about the opportunity and the talent of Ashton Genty. Then we've got Derrick Henry, Josh Jacobs. So better offense, older, maybe catches the ball a little bit less. That's really close. So Derrick Henry did outperform Josh Jacobs by a little ways last year. I'll keep it that way. Like I said, too, in terms of incoming running backs, I would say there's more of a risk to Josh Jacobs' workload. Achane, he's a borderliner, and I do think that the addition of Ollie Gordon could steal some of that baseline work. I think you bring a guy like him in to take some of those first down carries, some of those short yardage carries, and I do think that that will actively eat into some of his workload, maybe touchdown types of work too, possible short area. I don't know what they'll do with that. That's tough. Can't really predict that. Aaron Jones, I do have in line to really get a good amount of work. I think they're going to rely on him a lot. They didn't really bring anyone in to, take that workload a lot away. Last season, he had the highest workload that he's ever had. Does have some injury risk. RJ Harvey, I think an excellent opportunity there in Denver. Really good defense. Should be able to keep them within games. So they should be in running, have running opportunities, all game long. Of course, Sean Payton's had good rushing attacks in the past. And, look at who he's right next to. He has every opportunity to be an Alvin Kamara-esque type of talent. The other thing about RJ Harvey is that he brings a Taysom Hill-esque ability. He will have 2-3 touchdowns, I assume, as early as this year, where they're going to be from the quarterback position, whether he's throwing one or two of those, and then, of course, rushing otherwise, too, from a wildcat position. So, there's a little bit of that. I mean, one of those could come from 60 yards out, a surprise rushing play. He pulls back, and he darts it out, too. Not even from a wildcat. Doesn't have to be. So there's going to be some trick play opportunities that's going to maybe raise the ceiling in a couple of games this season. The ceiling potential, depending on how well he does for the rest of the game in his actual role. So that's just, things to keep in mind. Kyren Williams, I am a believer in Jarquez Hunter quite a bit. I do think that he's the number 2 running back. I do think there's the potential that he could steal some work from Kyren Williams. I don't think that he's going to become the starter over Kyren. I think they like Kyren a lot. For James Cook, for everybody, contract holdout situations, injuries at this point in the season that are just off-season injuries that we don't really know details about. For now, not taking them into account too much. We will keep an eye on them. We will monitor them, just like Christian McCaffrey last off-season. By the time that we got 2 weeks out from when most people are drafting or so, as I was off Christian McCaffrey, I wasn't about to be touching him in that high up in the first round of a draft, basically meaning I wasn't about to get him. That's when it starts to get very concerning, when we're into the off season, when we're starting to ramp up for the regular season. The off season games are starting to be played, and these guys still have a lot of question marks going around those injuries that they've had all off season. It's like, okay, well, what's going on for real? So and holdout situations, 95% of the time, injuries, holdout situations don't impact the regular season at this point of the year. And especially that's true for holdout situations. They usually get resolved. That's just kind of, how players and teams have to handle things until they get done. So, James Cook, Aaron Jones, very much in the same boat, right? At the back end of this. Same with Alvin Kamara. Alvin Kamara coming off of a great season. All right, so here's how I have ended up grouping this tier. Derrick Henry, Josh Jacobs, Kyren Williams, so very close between those two. I don't even know that Green Bay Packers have the better offense. This could be flipped so very easily between those two, so I don't know yet. James Cook, once again, not going to be paying too much attention to the off-season stuff surrounding that until we get closer to the season if we start to get worried about that. I think, the good things solved there. Achane, just not as good of an offense, fewer opportunities ultimately compared to James Cook for touchdowns, although, they don't historically haven't necessarily like fed James Cook the ball down near the end zone. And you always have the Josh Allen running it in instead of the running back threat too that happens 4 to 6 times a year. So that's significant, but still he did do better than Achane last year. And then Alvin Kamara, who's somehow still 29 years old. I don't know how he's forever young. And then Aaron Jones and RJ Harvey, where I think that might be the cutoff here into moving down into this second tier. So I'm going to go through this, and then I'll let you know the order. But currently it's Bucky Irving, Caleb Johnson, Chase Brown here, James Conner, Cam Skattebo, Breece Hall, Quinshon Judkins, Ken Walker, Jonathan Taylor. So all in all, I don't know that I'm going to be moving any of these guys to high-end flex. Maybe, maybe. But it's more so going to be out of concern about the situation than the potential. I should say, I think all these guys have the potential to be top 24 running backs for sure. Top 20, 24. No doubt. All right, so I had to create a new tier, and now I'm wondering, maybe I need to do something like that. I do see myself kind of putting these into 2 different buckets barely in this tier, but this is what I ended up coming up with. I do have Breece Hall at the front end of this tier, purely out of like the talent that is there, the lack of talent elsewhere on the roster, and a certain, that's kind of it, like a certain level of need from him. So I don't feel ultra confident having him at the top of this tier. I do think, that's where he's at the top of the tier, and I'd rather not draft at the top of the tier because I'm going to feel pretty much just as confident about some of these other guys as him in terms of where they might end up in the season. Quinshon Judkins, there's obviously some question about who ends up winning that role. How much is any one running back leading that running back room? But he is quite talented, very talented. I do think that he wins the job, and I do think that he gets the majority of the work well enough on a team that's going to want to reestablish that run quite heavily this year. So I think there's an excellent opportunity ahead for Quinshon Judkins. Jonathan Taylor, obviously, I think a great opportunity. It might help if we knew which quarterback was the starter, but I don't know how much. Expecting him to probably have a better year than last year, ultimately. Same with Bucky Irving. I'm expecting him to have a better year than last year. How much? Tough to say for sure. Ken Walker, expecting him to have a similar year, ultimately, I would say. And if anything, I think that this offense might take a small step back, but tough to say for sure there. Caleb Johnson, wasn't the biggest Caleb Johnson supporter. Is in a solid situation, good defense, should always leave that rushing attack as an option. Aging quarterback, there's going to be a good amount of usage for Caleb Johnson. He is also, of course, sharing to what extent, tough to say for sure, but I wouldn't be surprised if he gets every bit of what Najee had last season. But that is a bit of a concern, and where does that line get drawn here? I don't know. I don't know exactly where. But Chase Brown, we are going to have Zach Moss returning, and I do think that he'll eat into Chase Brown's workload enough that I'm not expecting Chase Brown to be what he was throughout, 70-60% of last year. I had him, correctly. I was high on him last year. How much of that ended up being correct because of an injury to Zach Moss? Well, some of it for sure. So I don't want to get over my skis on Chase Brown, but obviously I love him. I love the potential. It seems like the team is still not going to just give him the whole workload, and he did struggle efficiency-wise a little bit on the ground when he had the entire workload. So it would make enough sense that they're not going to just give him the bell cow type of work. So that is something to keep in mind for him. James Conner, as we get older, they have Trey Benson coming in. I think as early as before the season ended or after their season ended last year, did say that he would be getting more usage Trey Benson this coming up year. But I think James Conner's still the starter until he's not. So until then, we're going to keep him up there. Then Cam Skattebo, I want to put right up ahead of James Conner even possibly. When it comes to the offensive line, I guess I trusted Arizona's a little bit more, but maybe I shouldn't. I don't know. That'll be something to keep an eye on. But I am expecting Cam Skattebo to come in and be the lead running back for the New York Giants. So, and if so, I do think that there's a pretty good opportunity there for him to be, pretty highly regarded here. So he will be in this area, this territory of the rankings when we get done with this. High-end flexes, Tony Pollard, Travion Henderson, Joe Mixon, David Montgomery, Omarion Hampton, Chuba Hubbard. Remember, we will be remixing these a little bit, but for this tier, I think Joe Mixon, I do think Nick Chubb's going to eat into that groundwork of his. So I do think that there's a chance that Joe Mixon could be even a little bit of a disappointment, maybe a little bit more of an Austin Eckler. That is kind of where I'm at, and then we'll monitor that opinion to see if that seems like that's going to be what's going to actually happen. Otherwise, though, Tony Pollard, I think in a good situation, probably a back-end RB2, same with Travion Henderson. David Montgomery, new offensive coordinator coming in. I am expecting a slight increase to Jahmyr Gibbs' work and a slight decrease to David Montgomery's work. I'm kind of expecting that to be the thing at this point in time. So he's kind of in that same boat as Joe Mixon, but probably less receiving work, maybe? I don't know. I mean, he's actually a really good receiver. Better offensive opportunity. He's highly touchdown reliant. Obviously, Joe Mixon was better. I think there's just more potential for Joe Mixon than David Montgomery there. And then for Chuba Hubbard, a lot of opportunity for him. And he was quite good last year. He was the running back 18 last year. I have him projected for less. I do have, they brought in some running backs who I did not put their names in here, who I do have taking some work, but I'm a known Chuba Hubbard hater, so I have to try to not be that. I think the question comes between these three. So best team, best defense, obviously opportunity are the three things we want to look into between these three. Now, I feel like that's clear, right? Omarion Hampton, at the very least, their defense is on par with Tennessee, with New England's defense, I would say. Offensive line, also, I guess, something to keep in mind here. And if anybody's invested, if there's any that's headed in the most correct, I guess it'd be maybe a tie here between Tennessee and them, if nothing else. And then, opportunity, offensive line. There's one thing I'm missing there, but I think that's clear. Omarion Hampton. He might jump some other guys up there, huh? And then between Travion Henderson, Tony Pollard, I kind of want, the unknown. Actually, I'm going to put him ahead of Tony Pollard. I think he has the chance to be a better running back. So there we go. That's, I think, the order there. Then we get to the full PPR group, just kind of receiving backs, Brian Robinson obviously doesn't fit that description, but I do think he kind of fits in the same tier as the Rachaad Whites, Austin Eckler's. In fact, I mean, he would be ahead of them. He's maybe even more of a high-end flex. Probably move up. DeAndre Swift is the starting running back of a team. I think he automatically has to be ahead of them. I think that Jaden Blue has an opportunity to be a starting running back. I was really a big fan of him, and where he ends up getting drafted says that that's possible. Tyrone Tracy, same thing-ish. He has the opportunity. That's tough. That's tough. At this point in the offseason, it might be worth, banking on the possibility of him still beating Cam Skattebo out for the starting running back there, based on how he performed last year. I wouldn't bet on it, though. Oh, boy. That's really tough. How did they do last year in comparison to each other? Yeah, I mean, it's they're just all in the same tier. I'm going to go better offensive touchdown opportunity. I'm going to give to Austin Eckler yet over Tracy. That's tough. And then Jaylen Warren, I don't know to expect anything different than what he gave us last season ultimately, which really wasn't great for fantasy. I think Etienne's going to obviously be at the lead of that group. So there's the chance that Javonte Williams is the starter over Jaden Blue. We definitely have to keep that in mind. J.K. Dobbins, maybe he's more like that. I guess we're getting to that point. Zach Moss still also probably more like that in that territory. And then Isaiah Pacheco. There we go. Let's now mix some tiers. Oh, also some very interesting names. Brashard Smith. Could he become the starter over Isaiah Pacheco? Honestly, I think it is possible. Both of them are 7th-round draft picks. It probably won't happen to start this season, but I don't know. I do think that is possible. The big issue is that Brashard Smith is a project in a lot of ways as a running back. So he's really going to have to ramp up like Tyrone Tracy did. The thing is he's starting as a better pure running back than Tyrone Tracy did as a prospect. I thought that Brashard Smith in college was a better running back than Tyrone Tracy was as a running back in college. Receiving skill set, equal, maybe Brashard. I think maybe still also like Brashard Smith tape a little bit more than Tyrone Tracy, but tough to say there for sure. Devin Neal, I think, has an opportunity in New Orleans by season's end, because whether it be because of injury or just age or anything like that. I do think there's an opportunity there. Probably I'm not drafting it in like shallower leagues or anything unless I really taken some stabs at the running back position or something happens this offseason to suggest even better situation there. Ray Davis, of course, there's the contract situation going there in Buffalo. He did really nicely last season. He has an opportunity to grow that work. I liked him a lot as a prospect, as did other people. So there is an opportunity for some growth there. I would say more so another name where it needs an injury or that contract dispute to go the wrong way, the right way for him though. So just keeping an eye on that. There are some other names that I did end up missing here that I do want to at least mention. So like Ollie Gordon, I do think I am going to keep an eye on that. There's a big hill to climb there for that to be anything, but is something of interest. Jarquez Hunter, going to just keep an eye on that out of interest. Dylan Sampson, another interesting name. I don't think we have to worry too much about Trevor Etienne in Carolina, like taking that role or anything like that. I think those were the names. Damian Pierce, I would say was interesting, but with Nick Chubb being out of there, like that just... Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, I guess there is a very outside chance there of something. Kyle Manangai, there is an outside chance there. So those are the interesting names out there that could become names, be something definitely by season's end. So just keep those, stored in the back of your mind. Deeper leagues, those are names also to start to think about adding. Same with if they're available in your dynasty leagues. Let's start at the top here. Ashton Jeanty, I am going to move down a tier. It's just tough to put him into this same tier of these guys right off of the bat. But he's obviously close. Better offense and everything. Derrick Henry, can't quite put him ahead of that. But then I think we're into the territory where I'm willing to take a shot on that. I mean, I just think he's so very talented. And could easily be a better running back than these guys. And situation and everything, I think he could get more of the workload even than these guys. But just as much at least. So I like that a lot. The question is, where is the cutoff here? And I think it's probably Aaron Jones and R.J. Harvey, which is where this second tier, this is where this third tier ends up coming into place. Because then we've got, where is this next cutoff? Is it Bucky Irving? Is it Ken Walker? Is it Caleb Johnson? I think it's before Caleb Johnson. So I am going to move Cam Skattebo, James Conner. Man, I want to put Cam ahead of James Conner. Chase Brown, but because of where Cam Skattebo ended up getting drafted, there's just, no protection there in terms of the usage. The potential's great, but there's no protection there of him actually getting it. So I do want to be a little bit reluctant on that. as much as I love the dude and think that he is going to be their number one running back to start the season. So then we got Aaron Jones, RJ Harvey. Does Breece Hall go ahead of these guys? I feel like he still does. That's, tough. Quinshon Judkins, do I like his opportunity even more than RJ Harvey? I do think more talented. There's also more talent behind him, probably at the running back position. There's also, I think a better defensive situation in Denver and probably a better offensive situation for RJ Harvey. So that's incredibly close. Same with Jonathan Taylor. Incredibly close to those situations. Probably a worse defense, though. Oh my gosh, that's so tough. He's just so good, right? I think we have to put Jonathan Taylor ahead of a lot of these guys. He might even have to go ahead of Alvin Kamara. That's definitely a projection, though. I'll see, once I start drafting, how comfortable I am with that, exactly where he lands. For now, he's kind of borderline here, high-end RB2, number one running back. But I'm going to put him into the number one running back group, I think. And then we've got Bucky Irving, Ken Walker. Which group? Back-end RB2s or high-end RB2? Once again, they're just on the borderline of this group. But I think we're going to be moving Omarion Hampton up into this tier. And I think we got to move him up ahead of these guys, up ahead of Chase, up ahead of Caleb, up ahead of... I feel like we could almost make another cutoff, like back-end RB1s here. Is that how it breaks down? Getting quite granular here, but there is, either you make the tiers pretty big or you make them pretty small. And I guess in this case, I am going small, and then I will plan on increasing these tier sizes by the time we get into draft day. So this seems pretty decent. All right, this is what I decided on. So this is where I think we're probably going to see maybe the most potential of more shuffling leading up towards draft day. But I'm going to go Breece Hall, Aaron Jones, taking a gamble on that. I don't know how willing I'm going to be to draft Aaron Jones this high, but I am anticipating, there's a chance that he has a really good season this year, just because of rookie quarterback situation going on. I think there's a chance of quite a bit of usage given what's behind him in the running back room. So I do like that opportunity. Do I like RJ Harvey's opportunity more? It's tough to say, and he's got J.K. Dobbins behind him. That's tough. Same with Quinshon Judkins. He's got some talents behind him. Some of this will probably come down to once we hear things like, okay, Quinshon Judkins is by far the best running back in this running back room. He's going to be the leader. There's zero doubt about it. He's just having a really good offseason. Okay, you know what? I'll move him ahead of RJ Harvey, Quinshon, Aaron Jones, that kind of thing. Is I think where we're at. Seattle, Kenneth Walker, he's good. There's some talent behind him. They haven't really turned to that too much while he's healthy, but that's a big thing while he's healthy. And he's a little bit inconsistent as a running back, so he's just kind of borderline. Same with Bucky Irving being borderline. So for Caleb Johnson, you got Jalen Warren right behind him, just like, Chase Brown's got Zach Moss right behind him, just like Bucky Irving's got Rachaad White behind him. So that's where my concern, and then James Conner, of course, has Trey Benson right behind him. That's another interesting name, by the way. And Cam Scadaboo's got Tyrone Tracy right behind him. So yeah, that's, that I think starts to make sense of why these guys group together and why maybe they're shy of some of these guys. And then for the high-end flexes, we've got Travion Henderson, Tony Pollard, Chuba Hubbard, Joe Mixon, David Montgomery. So I definitely think, first of all, looking down, that we're going to move Brian Robinson up. Coming off of a bit of a down year, I expect that to improve. I think he's got less behind him than Travion Henderson, but he's got less receiving upside than Travion Henderson, and he's less big play explosive. So they're very, very close to one another. Technically, same with Cam. I so have Cam too high, right? Maybe something like this. And then do we have this like this tier of Joe Mixon, David Montgomery, where and DeAndre Swift, probably those three. And then DeAndre Swift, Chuba Hubbard. Do I really? Maybe more like that. Am I doubting on Chuba Hubbard too long? He had such a good season last year. I think maybe that's the cutoff. Maybe that's the cutoff. Yeah, so there is, I mean, Tyrone Tracy did pretty well. There is opportunity for Cam Scadaboo to come up into this area. So that makes me feel a little better. And then, yeah, maybe more like that. There we go. Bucky, Chase Brown, Caleb, James Conner. Ooh, I kind of want to take the chance on Travion. I kind of feel more comfortable. You know, I don't know for sure about that. We'll see. We'll keep it like that there. Jaden Blue, Tyrone Tracy, I think this tier is pretty solid. But Travis Etienne, I think we need to take into account the potential there. Travis Etienne behind Chuba Hubbard. I mean, Chuba wiped the floor compared to him last year. I think we'll keep it like that for now. And I'll let people convince me of getting Travis Etienne higher. It won't take the most convincing, but, you know, I think that's deservedly so right now. David Montgomery might have to move down a tier, but whatever. For now, we'll trust some sort of carryover. Is this all copacetic? How do we feel between Rachaad White, Tyrone Tracy Jr., Austin Eckler? The potential for I still think Jaden Blue has the potential to be a starter. So the day that gets announced, I mean, he'll be moving up. But I'll leave him. I would take the chance on him over these guys just in case. Then we got Javonte Williams. I don't think becomes the starter over Jaden Blue, but that's an opportunity, right? And then Isaiah Pacheco probably needs to be up in this territory. All right, I think that's it. I got rid of a tier here. So this name doesn't really matter anymore. High-end flex, I guess we just go low-end flex. And then you've got, like, just potential flexes, really, right here. Just outside of my top 36 types of players. And J.K. Dobbins could probably be even lower on that list. There's just the potential of him getting quite a good workload in Denver, depending on R.J. Harvey and everything. So let's keep it like that for now. So those are the rankings then. You can see kind of the updates I did down here. We'll go over the complete list right now. At my RB1, I have Saquon Barkley, followed by Jahmyr Gibbs, Bijan Robinson, and Christian McCaffrey, all in that tier, followed by Derrick Henry, Ashton Genty, Josh Jacobs, Kyren Williams, all guys who I think are going to be your top 10 kind of locks. And then we start to get into a group of guys who have the opportunity to become top 10 players, and I think that's true of both the high-end and the low-end guys here up to a certain point. Maybe this starts to end at about Breece Hall, though, really. So, yeah, you know what? We're going to go with the guys who I think have the potential to be top 10 running backs. James Cook, Devon Achane, Alvin Kamara, Jonathan Taylor, Omarion Hampton, and Breece Hall. That feels pretty good there. Room to flip these guys around, definitely there. After that, our RB2 kind of locks: Aaron Jones, R.J. Harvey, Quinshon Judkins, Kenneth Walker. Others who will probably be RB2s but might fall a little outside of that range: Bucky Irving, Chase Brown, Caleb Johnson, Travion Henderson, Brian Robinson Jr., James Conner, Cam Scadaboo. Followed by, guys who I think more than likely don't reach into top 24, but could. Starts off at Tony Pollard, followed by DeAndre Swift, Chuba Hubbard, Travis Etienne Jr., Isaiah Pacheco, Joe Mixon, David Montgomery. And then that's followed by Jaden Blue, Austin Eckler, Tyrone Tracy, Rachaad White in this group of kind of your receiving backs, with high-end potential for receiving backs to get other kinds of work as well. And then Jalen Warren, Javonte Williams, Zach Moss, J.K. Dobbins following up that rear. Guys who I anticipate probably won't be in my top 36 by the end of the day and already might be out of it. This is perfectly my top 36. So they literally are outside of my top 36. Jalen Warren, Javonte Williams, Zach Moss, J.K. Dobbins. And then other interesting names that will be, I already went into the interesting names earlier. So that is it for the running backs. These are going to be the rankings. Once again, link down in the description if you zoom forward to the rankings, which will get updated throughout the offseason. This is not the final version of the rankings, and I will be listening to other people's data, evidence, opinions, as well as looking into some of my own data and situations a little bit closer on some of these situations to pinpoint where these guys are going to be. But I anticipate at this point in time that these are roughly the zones where these guys will end up in my rankings. Thank you very much. Peace out. Wide receivers, tight ends next week, and then I think we're going to go live to do like at least once a week to do some fun drafting, maybe a couple times a week. Start practicing our fantasy drafting. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.